Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show, or our alternate version, Best Darn Everything, which we'll be doing this week. And this week we've got a fun topic. We are going to take a kind of a weird swerve here, and we are going to talk today about feel-good video game stories is what we're going to call it. I'm going to explain a little bit more of what that means here in a minute, but we do have a special guest today, very special to us. And of course, joining me as always, your co-host with the most, it's Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
I'm feeling good, man. In the last 3 days, I've been told your beard makes you look like King Leonidas twice at work. And I had a little...
Wait, like now or when he was in 300?
When he was in 300, I was told that. So then I started yelling Spartan quotes at him while we were offloading planes at work. And then I was told by a little kid yesterday that the clothes I was wearing made me look like a rock star. So like my ego is like up here this week, which is it changed for me. I'm feeling great, man. How you doing, Miles? How you doing, special guest? What's his name?
Well,
he's actually got.
I'm going to introduce our special guest, but I have to say, since you're talking about how much you're raising, I feel super awkward right now because I can feel the hydraulics, I guess, or whatever it is in this chair. And literally, I'm just dropping inch by inch. So anybody who's been watching this video so far, my head started by this Ninja Turtle, and I'm down to this Ninja Turtle. So if I at some point have to readjust, we'll figure that out. That's a fun new situation.
I got my second issue of the last run-in this weekend as well, so I'm probably going to read that later tonight.
Everything's coming up, Richie. But also, hopefully, everything is coming up, Toby, because we have our very favorite guest back on the show today. He's joined us through so many of these nonsense conversations at this point, probably more than any of us could collectively name, but we always have such a great time talking to you. Welcome back to the show, the leader of Bad Secret Media, Toby.
Hello. I am here.
How you been, man?
I've been pretty good. I've been doing good. Almost got wiped out by that storm a month or so ago, but I'm still here.
Oh no, dude, you didn't see that? That was just a conspiracy. There was no snow.
Oh yeah. Did you see the people lighting it on fire and they were like, see, it doesn't melt.
It's not real snow, man. It doesn't melt. That's not how snow works, man.
Just spend one day on the job with Toby or Richie and then we'll figure that out.
Yeah. Trust me, it was cold where I work. It was very cold.
Well, we're glad to have you back. So we're talking about feel-good video game stories today, and pretty much anytime we can find an excuse to have you on the show, we're like, yeah, that topic associates with Toby. In this case, it actually does, though, because we're talking about video games, and you, of course, along with your conspiracy theory podcast, the Secret Transmission podcast, you also have, with our other good friend Goobs, all the way from the Great White North, have the Secret Levels podcast, which is an entire podcast dedicated to all things retro gaming, basically.
Yeah.
Do I have that right?
Yes. We usually pick one game, we go over it, we talk about the history and the story and some fun facts, and then we rate it, and we cuss at it because old games are hard or not good sometimes. So yeah. It's kind of my field. I wouldn't say expertise because I'm not an expert in anything.
Dude, I feel that, dude. I don't feel like I'm an expert in anything, but sometimes people ask me things about stuff, and I find that very weird. But regardless, we're so glad to have you. And when we said we were going to do feel-good video game stories, I have to give most of the credit of this to Richie, who came up with this topic. But I will give us, I will say that the origins of this, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, WizKid, but I had sent you an article that basically went over how, I want to say it was the governor or mayor of Tsushima from the game Ghost of Tsushima.
But those of us that speak correctly.
Thank you. Honestly, I was like, I'm not I do the nuclear as a bit against you, but the Tsushima I still can't do correctly.
Just don't say the T. Just don't say the T.
Tsushima?
There you go.
Okay. Well, the mayor of the real Tsushima essentially wanted to make all of the developers of that game honorary ambassadors, I believe it was. And I believe that was kind of what sparked this idea. Is that do I have that about right?
Well, I guess this is just over after years and years of hearing from the other side. I'm glad to see more and more good stories coming out these days, because ever since we were in school, you always hear from one side that how video games like damage your brain and warp your mind, and they're bad influences, and they teach you to, kill a hooker and take the money back.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Back in our day, we had to pick up the hooker and drop her off both ways uphill in the snow.
But I just feel like video games always get a bad rap, and like I feel like from my experience, and I know it's not the same for everybody, but there's a lot of good stories out there where like video games in some cases saved lives, but they're also positive influences on people. And I
hope that's a teaser for a story that you have coming up.
I like to take that story, or I like to take that idea and spread it, because I mean, I hear people saying too, like people who play video games are just children and it's not fun. I literally saw somebody get into an argument on Facebook once that, why don't you just go fishing instead? And I'm like, if it makes you happy, what's the difference? Like if this person,
they clearly have never played Sega's Bass Pro Simulator.
Yes, they haven't. But I feel like video games get a bad rap a lot of the times, and you hear a lot of older generational people, especially on one particular political spectrum side, go after them, where in most cases I feel like they do good, with the exception of little kids screaming profanities, which will be left out of this discussion.
Well, I think the main issue was when we get to the Mortal Kombats and some of the fighting games, the ones that are violent or whatever. I feel like games have progressed so much more now, especially with a lot of newer games. There's so much creativity that like a younger kid can do with Minecraft or Roblox, or you can build worlds, the Lego games and stuff. I really think, this is my opinion, that video games are really good for problem solving, because usually, like, I love the Lego game series and I love playing those with my kids, because there's always something. It's like, well, you have to break this wall because this part is going to be something that you're going to use for whatever, like there's problem solving, and yes, you're breaking a wall or whatever, and they're fighting whatever you're playing. But there's stuff you have to do, and the hand-eye coordination, I feel like that's something that really helps. I wouldn't say that it's exactly like catching a ball, or it's not the same, but there is still that, like, I'm seeing this and I'm pointing at my TV. I'm seeing this and I'm reacting to it. So I don't know. Do we still have the same stigma though of like, I mean, I know they're currently trying to ban GTA 5 in like Minnesota. I don't know, somewhere. There's just a random state that's
fascinating. I was going to actually say that I kind of feel like to some extent we sound like old men like yelling at clouds for this portion of this podcast, because like I don't really think that there's that much of a stigma against video games anymore. I feel like that was something that like we lived through, and definitely there was a time where it's like, oh, it's all those punk kids that hang out at the arcades and whatever, but like video games are so mainstream now. I even hear stories of like parents, which we'll probably talk about, but like I hear stories of parents like enrolling their kids like into like classes and like getting them video game tutors so that they can actually be like have a better chance of getting into esports and things of that nature.
Well, let me add this about the creativity about like video games. We've talked before about skateboarding, right?
Yeah.
I remember a interview with Bucky Lassick, one of the vert skaters. He was talking about like playing the Tony Hawk game, and I want to say he was doing like a kickflip indie and then flipping it with his hand before he went back down. And he came up with that because of the video game. Or there's some story that's very similar, because he's like, well, why don't I try that in real life? Like it was almost kind of like his practice run of like, let's see, what can I come up with on this game and then try in real life?
We talked about that during our skating episode, where like you have to like see it before you can do it, and in this case, like it can literally help you see more Skinner than you did before.
Gotta tie it back in. But the getting back on the video game stuff that Toby was talking about with the creativity and the problem solving and whatnot, it's not just that it does that, but that video games over the years have made it accessible to every kind of person. There's people that can't that don't have mobility in their arms and legs, that can't do anything. And like they've come up with controllers that can be controlled solely by your head. So like those people can be on Call of Duty killing us 80 times in one match because people are going to such length and effort in the video game industry in the world to create ways for everybody to be engaged. And I think that's something that like you don't get in a lot of other fields where it's like literally all inclusive. Even the shit talking is all inclusive in the video game world.
There's one guy, I believe he's like paralyzed basically from the neck down, and he's got like this little straw that he can blow into, and fucking sniping people left and right, just going like they're blow darts. Like he's incredible. He's 10 times better than me. And then like Microsoft has been really good about making these like big handy accessible pads and stuff. So like if you lost a hand or something, like it's a pad that you can just like kind of hit as your controller.
I think both Sony and Microsoft have done like incredible leaps and bounds in like the last generation of consoles of making accessibility like a priority.
Yeah, which is incredible because, you know, this is one of those things where it's like I've thought about that before. Like if I lost a thumb or something at work, like what am I gonna do? Because I mean, we still podcast and stuff, but like that would like
no, it's gonna be gonna be way harder to kill yourself without a thumb. I get it. Like that's gonna be difficult.
But like I have a video game podcast, so it's like okay, now I can't necessarily do that. Like if I lost a hand or even if I broke my hand or something and we wouldn't be able to record the show, I'd be like, well, I can watch video game footage. Like it would just change everything that, you know, us as like normal, like casual gamers or whatever, like it's crazy. So it is nice to see that these companies have gone out of their way to, if you can find any video on the display, like how they do it, like it's incredible. Like it makes you feel good. Like, yes, I'm glad you get to still play. I just wish you weren't whooping my fucking ass. So,
I feel like we're branching into another topic, but this totally reminds me of like the opposite feeling of whenever you see people are like, oh, they only play games on their phones. They're not real gamers. Or, oh, they only have a Nintendo Switch. They're not a real gamer. Or if you're not gaming on a PC, then you're scum. I can't stand those people because it's like, no, it's about letting people have a good time, accessing it however they're able to.
I can add to that because there's a big thing about the retro community using save states and like with
oh, you're not a real retro gamer.
Dedicated that Rick and Morty episode to Toby.
Well, listen, I am in the camp of play the game how you want, like whatever's going to be the best experience for you. Save states, play it on easy. Use cheat codes, whatever. Yeah. You're still
dust off the game genie, man. Have a good time with it.
Hell yeah! Don't say genie around me. I got a genie on the show. But yeah, no, there's a big stigma against it. You're not a gamer if you have to use the rewind feature or whatever. Play it how you want. I mean, it's.
Yeah. But we're talking about feel good stuff today, and one thing I want to say too, kind of going back to all the accessibility stuff and just the leaps and bounds they're making is another thing to talk about with that regard to kind of bring it all back is VR. The VR space is getting so crazy. I predict 2, maybe 3 more years, all of us are logging out of the real world, and we're going to just ready to one this shit for the rest of our decades. Like, I want a DeLorean, and I don't see any other way of getting it. So, like, that, yeah. And yes, I am that basic.
I think that my character will have at least a 6-pack once that happens.
At least. Well, yeah. If you're going to take the Leonidas beard, you might as well take the Leonidas 8-pack.
There you go.
Don't cut yourself short now.
I will definitely feel good about myself in video games.
Maybe instead of giving yourself abs, you should take care of those diabetes, man. That's what I would start with.
I will die from diabetes in real life because I'm so like fine-tuned in the digital world that I forget that I have it.
You forget that you have to take care of yourself?
But no, man, Miles, you're right. This is supposed to be about feel-good stories, and we might as well start with like what you led the show off with. You talked about Ghost of Tsushima and how Japan wants to make the developers real world ambassadors to Japan for everything they did. For those of you that don't know, there was a lot of damage done to one of the shrines in Japan in real life on Tsushima. And
during a hurricane or a twister, a typhoon, I believe it was.
Yeah. And so the people in charge put a fundraiser up on GoFundMe for repairs. And it's just like they got astronomical amounts of money. And it was due to the game. Like, I don't even know how else to describe it because there's so much fanfare around the game by that point that everybody knew what it was. And even though that particular shrine wasn't in the game, fans still reached out and poured all this money to help repair it. And they reached their goal fairly easily. Yeah. So we'll start repairs on it here pretty soon. But I know that, like, it's the Watasumi Shrine, I think is what it's called. It was destroyed by a typhoon in September of 2020. But they did a GoFundMe, and they got...
it's recent that it got destroyed.
Yeah. But, like, I mean, that's art, like, having an impact in the real world. And I do believe video games are art. I'm biased, obviously. But, like...
I think we all have that consensus, yeah.
Yeah. But, like, it literally, like...
Except for Toby, he's like, if it's not on the Nintendo, it ain't shit.
But I just think that's a really, really awesome story about how they were just like, hey, this like natural landmark. Well, it's not natural. This man-made landmark that's like really old and broken down got destroyed, and people are like, oh, here, take just a little bit of money here and there, and enough people did it, and it gets fixed. That's pretty incredible. I mean, it sounds really stupid when you say it like that, but
it sounds so simple, but it's so huge. It's so big. It really is. The goodwill that all was brought because of that game, because that game was so popular. And a lot of it, too, I think that the game developers took a lot of time and effort to treat their culture with respect. Like, it was a fictional game. There was some magical elements in the game that may or may not have actually existed. But, like, with the respect to the Japanese culture and to that island's culture, they took measures to make sure that they weren't being disrespectful. And I think that goes a long way. And I think they even mentioned that they foresee things like tourism and things of that nature in the future, just because of mega fans of the game that would like to go and like see what they experienced virtually. They could go and see in real life.
Well, I mean, it's like all the Game of Thrones sets, all the countries that they filmed Game of Thrones in got lots of boost of tourism because of the show. So it's that same effect, but I'm glad to see it on the video game side of things too. So, but that's like the most recent story that we've really read about with video games helping out real life. It's one of my favorite ones here. I know Toby's probably going to jump in here pretty soon, but one of my favorite stories, and I know Miles has a similar one as well, was the story from a few years ago where there were video gamers streaming while they were playing, and somebody saw on their friend's screen in the background, somebody broke into their home. And like at first they thought it was a prank, but then it ended up being like a real break-in, and they didn't even live in the same country, but they called the police in that person's country and got police to come and help them and save them just because they were friends online playing a video game. So like that's a wild story when you think about it. Like there's a lot of little steps involved there, but like it's because of video games. They had somebody that probably didn't even have a lot of friends in real life, but they had friends online that took care of them, and that's pretty freaking cool.
Well, that's another topic we could dive into on another podcast. But like friends in online versus friends in real life, especially in a post-COVID world, what's the real difference?
Exactly.
So that's complex. I mean, I think you could dive into a lot on that, but. There's been many cases of that, Rich. That's something that happens a lot on streaming, of like people that have had 911 called on their behalf. I've even seen one where a Twitch streamer went into a diabetic, like a blood sugar dropout, and his streamer's followers were able to recognize like, hey, something's very wrong here, and they figured out, call the police in his city, essentially.
Which that does happen. You can play video games and get a very low blood sugar. That's very easy, actually. Sure. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, see, that's what I was going to bring up. Is I've heard of stories of people having like medical emergencies or something, and having someone call in because they're not responsive and stuff. Which it's really crazy to think about, like, because I mean it's great. It's great that someone called in, but how freaking scary would that be? You're sitting there watching someone and you literally can't do anything.
Yeah.
But it is awesome that they're able to, do something about it, and it's not just going unnoticed.
I feel like that's going to be the next horror movie like spin-off that we get in that like found footage style. Like we've already done like a Zoom call thing with the movie Host on Shudder, which was actually pretty good. But I bet you we're going to have like a Twitch stream at some point will be the POV of the film. And maybe we should be the people to do that. But anyway, I see that. I foresee that coming. And I think that'd be real interesting. A terrorist plot seems like you're like playing Rainbow Six and then like you actually get abducted by terrorists while playing on stream. That's some shit right there. Let's make it happen.
But see, that's the part that would throw me off, because like if I saw that happening to somebody over footage, like even if they were having a diabetic emergency, I'd be like, oh, this is like a skit. This is something.
This is happening on a screen. It must be fake.
Yeah, exactly. When did those people
this is so well produced. That is what a diabetic drop, low blood sugar drop looks like. Wow,
research.
Look at their research.
Yeah.
The acting.
Confused. Acting's a little shaky.
When you were talking about like familiar like places, and this is just like a small feel good thing. I remember when that last Spider-Man for PS4 game came out. People in New York were like posing Spidey in front of their window, and then like they'd go into the camera mode and take pictures, and then they'd go out their window and take a picture, basically from the same exact spot. And I thought that was so
really cool. Actually, yeah.
That the games are so like down to details. I'm sure there's some parts of the Spider-Man game that aren't exact, but it's pretty damn close to where they could have Spider-Man sitting on their like where they would be living, and have that same POV on the game and right out their window.
No, that's really cool. With some
incredible.
Photoshop skills, you could make that look really cool if you combine those up. Like you could literally have a selfie with Spider-Man hanging outside your window.
Yeah. Well, and like I went to West Virginia to go to the Mothman Festival a couple of years ago, which happened to be when they were releasing Fallout 76, which there's a big Mothman and like cryptid presence in that video game, and they were giving out stuff. And there's a lot of the West Virginia stuff that they got I'm not real super familiar, but like it was kind of neat walking around the square and stuff. And I was like, I was there. Cool. So, it's really
even like the Spider-Man game you mentioned, just because of how realistic the New York is. Like, I think it's just neat that they took the attention to detail to get that correct. I mean, like when you are standing there on 5th Street looking up at the Avengers Tower, it's exactly like it is in real life. No, but with the exception of that building, it really was like incredibly detailed. Like that's impressive.
Well, besides that, was there any other stories that you guys had? I know I've got at least one or two more to go through, but Toby, you got anything else that you were thinking about?
Not.
I've got one that kind of jarred my memory here. This is years old at this point. I want to say it was like Xbox 360 era, probably. But this kind of combines the element of like feel-good stories that can happen in a game along with creativity. Because a very like prominent Portal player back in the day on the Xbox, which is a game I've always been very intrigued by, but I never actually got to play. It's a puzzle game where you use a like transfer portal to solve puzzles essentially. And there's like this whole element of like an evil AI, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, this gamer was actually able to create in-game a marriage proposal in the form of a portal puzzle. So his girlfriend essentially would have to solve these puzzles, and it actually ended with GLaDOS, I believe is the name of the evil robot, but it was like reprogrammed for GLaDOS to essentially say like, this guy, blah, 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 wants you to take, or, wants to take your hand in marriage. And like, she basically got proposed to as she was solving her own custom portal level. And like, to me, like, that's one example I remember. But there's been multiple examples, especially with MMORPGs, where people will get like entire communities together to do these really incredible things. Sometimes it's a marriage proposal. Sometimes it's like a kid's like Make-A-Wish type of thing where like he's not doing so hot physically, but he loves this game, and like an entire community of people will come together in the game and create this really special moment. And I think that's something that is kind of going back to the old man yelling at clouds. Like that's what, like, people are so afraid of video games in the 90s and earlier than that, and still some today, I'm sure, but it's like every generation of video game, we do more and more things to bring the community of gamers together. And of course, there's always going to be those Rocket League asshats that tell you to go kill yourself or uninstall or whatever. But like, need boost. But more often than not, this community, I think, is very inclusive and very, very creative in a fun way.
Well, like you said, like how many stories are there of people meeting on World of Warcraft and then getting married in real life?
I have friends in real life that met in the
incredible.
Lord of the Rings MMORPG. And they're married with like they have 2 kids and they have another on the way currently. So,
Gee.
That's incredible. Like, who would have thought? Like, oh, because that's like the last thing you're looking for while you're like, okay, I've had a long day at work. I'm gonna sit back, play this game. And then you just kind of like, oh, I'm going to play with this person.
She's an 8-foot ogre. He's a topless maid at the bar. It's a tale as old as time.
yeah. I don't know. That it's incredible, just the amount of time that you can actually spend with people. Because I remember, like, the only time I would ever get to play a video game with my friend is if they were sitting next to me. You know, like, when both my brothers were in the Navy, so there was, a couple of years that we didn't get to hang out very much because they were traveling all over the world, and we'd play GTA together. Like we'd get online and play games together, and that's what we did to catch up. Like we'd be sitting there talking, and then blowing cars up and stuff. Like you do.
GTA, seeing how many wanted stars you can get.
But that's what's incredible is that yeah, you can sit there and just play this game, but like, I mean, we used to play the Friday the 13th game.
We started making little short videos based on it. That's some creative shit that we did based on video games. That was the dumbest shit ever, but I love those videos. Those are so much fun. We were like trying to do like a red versus blue, but in the like Friday the 13th universe.
But there was like 7 or 8 of us, and it always sucked because I can't remember how many people can be in the room. We always had like 1 or 2 too many, so like someone had to sit out. But like it was a great time. Like we all just got together. We're playing the game, but we're also bullshitting about like, oh, did you watch this show? Like you get to connect with people a lot more now because of the games that we have in these days. Anyway. I know that wasn't the case, but even back then, like
King of the Couch, man. I can't remember how many times we had sleepovers where only 2 people can be playing this game at any given time, unless you had one of those fancy like 4-person adapter things. But like most people, it's 2 players playing and like 6 dudes watching, and like, oh, I got next, I got winner, or whatever the case may be.
And now it's 150 on Call of Duty Warzone.
Yeah. But you go through 40 at a time, so it doesn't seem so bad.
Well, see, and there is something with just like old school, like sitting next to someone on a couch and playing a game. There's bonding with that too.
No screen watching.
Huh?
You were a cold screen watcher.
Well,
actually, there's a game called Screen Cheat that's so funny because you have to look at their screen because everyone's invisible.
I've heard that.
You have to look at the screen.
The whole point is how good you can be at cheating.
But like you would sit next to each other and you'd bond. Like, oh, you can do it. Kind of cheer on the people that you're sitting with, and like there's some. Going through the trenches of these fucking Marios and Sonics and stuff. Like, that's how me and my mom used to bond. Like, we used to play video games. I remember playing Sonic 3 all the time with her. I'm sure she probably hates every bit of that, but like, and my grandma, we bring her up on the secret levels all the time. Like, it's a Meemaw game. That's what we're talking about, is me and Meemaw would play. Like, me and Meemaw used to play the Donkey Kong games, the Yoshi games. Like, that was how we bonded. Like, I have so many like games where it's like, well, that's a Meemaw game, and Goobs makes fun of me about it. But Yeah, Meemaw was probably doing all the work. If we're being real, I was probably like Diddy Kong
you
or
were
something,
the second
like,
player, but the controller wasn't plugged in.
Yeah, I was Tails while she was Sonic, and I was just dying.
Fly, and that was super fun.
He always came back.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
For what it's worth, Bob's in the room,
Yeah,
and Bob, I unlocked the spot. If you want to jump in and talk about some feel-good video game stories, sir, you feel free. Join us. But yeah, dude, I never played with my mom, but I like some of my earliest memories with my dad were playing the NES, playing like old school original Mario, and he played some RPG like dungeon crawler game that I didn't care for or like understand, but I loved watching him play because like he'd fight like monsters and shit, and like I thought that was cool.
Well, Bob is scared to talk right now for what it's worth. He's coming up with some lame excuse in the comments.
He's just putting a little makeup on so he's ready for camera. Give him some time. It's all right. He's got to make sure he's got his coolest mug out and ready before he hops on screen.
But no, it's getting back with the friends thing. Like you were talking about friends in real life, but like it's like even when we were playing Friday the 13th, we made new friends that we've never met in person too on that game, which is part of the community thing.
Oh yeah,
I've talked with people before that like. Legitimately, I just got the vibe that like they were done like with life, and they're messaging you over the PlayStation app, and it's people I've been playing games with for years, and it's like,
and you're like, hey man, get off the ledge and come play Call of Duty.
I mean, in a fucked up way, but like not like that. It's just like where you actually talk through problems with these people, and I think a lot of that's due to the fact that like you can share those feelings, and you never have to see that person in real life. So like, there's never the other side where like you have to feel embarrassed about it. And I think
like that anonymity is an important, powerful thing that lets you feel more comfortable. It's why that Whisper app got popular.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. But yeah, there's the fact where like you can be friends with somebody, and it's kind of like in the middle where it's all the benefits and a lot less of the consequences or the cons basically. And it's weird because I assume there's probably a whole ton of a bunch of stories like in that regard as well. About people being down and like the video game world brought them back. That's kind of what Miles was talking about earlier with people having tough times.
Yeah. I think that the whole COVID thing too definitely both boosted online games, but I know for certain just from reading stories, it kind of reinvigorated couch play amongst like families and roommates and people that were sheltering together, quarantining together. Because, you know, in a time where everybody is kind of seeking out that like human companionship, if you're already stuck in a house, like everybody can go sit on the couch and, you know, play Smash Brothers or, you know, and Nintendo Switch specifically, like they couldn't keep their systems on the shelves. And they do a ton of games that are both really cheap. I know Toby's actually even done a video, I believe, explaining how you can easily find some really cheap, inexpensive, and fun Switch games really easily. And a lot of their games don't even support online, but they promote couch play. And then, of course, like the opposite of Richie was saying, the internet, of course, is what kept us most connected when we were disconnected. And yeah, I imagine, especially when you have all that sense of isolation, just having that voice coming through your headset that isn't an NPC is really powerful.
Well, because of COVID, and this is going back to like, oh, people sitting around playing video games and you know, passing the time or bonding with each other. Retro video games have skyrocketed because everyone like rushed to eBay, rushed to their local game store.
What am I going to do to fill all this time?
Like
I'll beat Ninja Turtles on the NES.
Like, dude, there's so many games that have spiked. And like they got like a ridiculous spike in the price, and in fact, it's kind of affected our show because there's a part of our show where we talk about how much the game is, and some of the prices are all screwed up now. So I have to like. Because who knows if they're going to stay at those like peaked out prices or if it's going to fall back down once we get a more normal you know, world again where people are going out and stuff. Like people are going to be like, "Oh, I don't need all this Nintendo 64 and these 40 games."
I beat Turok enough, I think, for one lifetime.
Yeah, but the Wii was selling like crazy. Everyone was looking for the Wii. They were mostly
Couldn't find the
looking
Wii.
for the Wii
I thought it was
Sports.
the Switch, but the Wii makes a lot of sense too.
Wii Sports. Yeah,
Well,
that's hard
the
to find
Swi-
nowadays, from what I hear.
So yeah, the price on that Wii
Oh, wow.
Sports went up.
It used to be
I have 2
And-
copies of that.
Yeah,
game.
I've got like 4, and I was just like,
I could live
mean-
with 2.
To be fair, Miles and I had a Wii when it first came out, and we played the shit out of that game.
Oh my
Like-
god, yeah, dude. We played so much golf, so much tennis, the bowling.
dude. Baseball.
And I was saving baseball for last, but
Yeah.
I played the boxing a lot. But the game we literally like broke the machine to the point where it was impossible because we got so far into that baseball game that like when you're playing the computer, it just progressively gets harder and harder. And like our score was like off the charts, and it was like every pitch was impossible to hit. It was fun.
Speaking of the Wii, feel good moments and stuff, like Nintendo, like with the Switch and the Wii, have really tried to help with like exercise and like moving, and not everything's just sitting there like this. Like you got to move your arms in certain games and dance games.
Even like as far as like Wii Fit,
I
then the new Fit Ring game they did for Switch.
I just spent the weekend playing Just Dance recently, and having my girlfriend's kid play Bangarang like 80 times in a row. So yeah,
how's that one go?
No, I'd explain the term Bangarang though, and remind them what movie that came from.
Bangarang.
But yeah, there's like actual, because that was always the argument is go outside and get some exercise. Well, fuck you. I'm gonna
Try to get some exercise, jackass.
The funny thing is, like, I guess it's always about rebelling because, like, when we were kids, it's like go outside and get some exercise. So what do? We get Game Boys and we go outside and we play our fucking Game Boy. And now kids like go outside, get some fresh air, and they're like, "Fuck you, we're
go outside and make some friends.
We're gonna get healthy on this machine right here." What's up, Bob? Welcome, man.
With our friends.
Bob Mayer. Hey, he's here. What's up, dude?
Oh, good.
Howdy.
It's working.
Welcome, man. How you been?
Fuck you, Richie. I'm here. You gonna call me out like that? I have no choice. I gotta start plugging shit in.
Excellent.
This discussion just got really brutal.
Yeah, it's no longer feel-good video games. It's Bob's on a rampage.
I assume I'm good at cuss on this.
Oh yeah, say whatever you want to.
Based on previous track record.
Oh my god, feel-good story not to do with video games. No, it relates because Goobs runs a video game podcast with Toby. One of my favorite memories from Best Darn Diddley is the first time we had Goobs on. The first time he cussed, I was like, "Dude, you can't cuss on this." And like before we even got on in the show, I told him that we run a clean show, and he was so in his head the whole freaking episode. And then like towards the end, he was pissed when I let it go that he doesn't. That barely counts, but I'm going to say it classifies as a feel-good video game story.
It made you happy, and it was via the internet, so we'll count it.
Yeah.
You call this what you want, feel good, but it relates to Goobs and not cussing. We did the Bible adventure games for secret levels, and we tried to be respectful to our Christian friends and not say any curse words, which is impossible. If you've ever played that game, it just instantly makes you want to cuss. I had a Mormon
friend when I was younger, and that's like one of the only games he had, so that's what we played.
That's asking a lot for
the
Goobs.
whole episode.
He only knows 8 words, and
I was
5
the one
of
that
them are fuck in a different like spelling. So, Bob, you've been listening for a minute, and I assume you have something to say. We're talking about just feel good video game stories. What do you have to mention or talk about?
You know, something I really miss more than anything is arcades.
Oh, hell yeah.
I miss that feeling of going out to a place and just like getting $20 worth of quarters and just playing pinball, Simpsons, Ninja Turtles, Aerosmith, the
and
shooter.
You would meet friends doing that too, because like if you're sitting on like a Simpsons arcade machine or Sunset Riders or anything, very likely what's going to happen is somebody else is going to see, especially if you're good. If you're doing it all decently or you've gotten progressed at all, somebody's going to be like, "Oh, I want to get in on that." And then before you know it, it's almost like like when they talk about on Fight Club with those like little like temporary conversations or temporary friends or whatever. It's like Single serving friends. That's it, man. You get like a single gaming session friend every time you go to the arcade.
That's kind of come back though with the barcade.
Yeah.
If you're smart enough about it too, which I enjoy. I just need some more arcades in some of those because they all seem to have like the same 8 machines now.
It's because every time we do any podcast like this, we always say Simpsons, Sunset Riders, Turtles in Time.
They get the good ones. They get the ones that people want, and then they're just like, all right, we don't need to get like
you
the lesser known
anyway,
ones.
Dude. Honestly,
Toby, that one football game we played in Denton, though, like I need that at every arcade. That pigskin
That
one
was pigskin. Was it?
That one was
Pigskin. It was
hilarious.
awesome.
I just want to play that all the time now, but I feel like it's okay to go ahead and go with like I know Miles is waiting for me to talk about it a little bit. Probably my favorite like feel good video game story. And the first time I read about this was many, many years ago with Mario Kart, and I've recently read that it happened like 7 years ago with some Xbox racing game too. The story of the writer or the man who pulled out his old video games after his father had passed. And like the first time I read about it was Mario Kart, and he went back to do time trials. And if for anyone that ever played Mario Kart 64, whoever had the best record on that stage, it had a ghost of them driving around the course. And like that's how you knew if you were beating the time or not, is if you were ahead of the ghost. And this dude literally busted it out and was racing against his deceased father because he had remembered that his father had set all the time trial records. So like he was
literally about to cry right now. I just saw the wave of emotion hit him when you said that.
I just think that's such a cool story.
I could just imagine that.
That is incredible. I was hoping we'd save that one for last because that or it doesn't have to be last.
Well,
but
that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, everyone set off, but it doesn't have to be last by any means. But I do think that's probably going to be the most powerful thing that we talk about, just because how incredible and that's some technology. Like that's a use of that technology that they absolutely did not intend for it to be used as when they thought of it. They're this would be cool, and then years later it comes back around and like lets you have that last little connection with somebody you lost. I mean, how do you not tear up during that? I think we're all going to get a little dusty-eyed here in a minute.
Well, that person you lost had to have been good at the race.
I've talked about this before where it's
all my relatives suck at video games. I'll never see them again.
What happens when you get ahead of that time? Like I would probably slow down and let that time keep beating me just so that memory is still there. But
that ghost is actually purgatory for the deceased person.
He's like, please beat me, son. For the love of God, I'm tired of driving around Donut Hills.
I need release.
Rainbow Road Soaps.
Oh man, yeah, that's powerful, man. That's really really cool, and I think that's something that like as we get more into things like we brought up earlier, Twitch streaming or even podcasting about video games. I think at some point we're gonna hear these feel good stories where it's like, oh man, my dad used to talk to me about The Simpsons and I didn't really get it, but then like years later I discovered that he had like 300 and something episodes talking about The Simpsons. Fucking crazy. I'm never going to listen to them, but I think that's cool that they exist. That's a feel-good story right there. Also, the dad in the story is Richie. I don't want kids. They're the worst.
I just think it's all a matter of perspective, and the people outside of the video game world, which like we alluded to is getting smaller and smaller each day, I feel like, but they're always going to think they're a bad influence and they do all these bad things, whereas everyone inside the world, it's just there's good and bad people in every walk of life, but like the technology and the way it's being used in this industry, I feel like is they're making good choices with a lot of the stuff in here, except for Cyberpunk 2077. But everything else, they've been making the good choice for the technology that they're using.
They're not all going to be winners.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, you were saying earlier like how people are like, well, if you play on your phone, you're not a gamer. I'd even say like remember Words with Friends, dude. like how many you can still stay connected with people. Like I was saying about playing with my brothers on GTA when they were in the Navy and stuff. Like they could be anywhere on the world, and I could play Words with Friends or any of these goofy ass games like that. Like, that's incredible. That's such a neat thing that we have now, and it's always with us. It's always in our damn hand or in our pocket, to where like I could roll over at 2:00 in the morning and be like, "Oh look, Miles had won a turn. 100%. Now it's my turn," and I can play it real quick. This is a stretch,
but over quarantine for me, I was able to connect with some other comedians and play poker online, which was like we would actually have our faces on camera. And then like a separate program running our poker table, so that like we're sitting there like looking at each other in the eye when we make a call down and whatnot. It was as close as we could be to playing poker in real life, and that was just through some random app on the computer or on the tablet.
We a group of people online that I don't know in real life that I played Monster Hunter with. There was like 10 of us. We would play Cards Against Humanity over the PlayStation late at night when we were sick of Monster Hunter. So like literally,
nice.
There's an online website like where you could play Cards Against Humanity, and like it was stupid but freaking hilarious. I mean, like
especially when everybody at that point's probably a few drinks in and like ready to call it a night, and you can just have a nice couple of laughs before you call it, or even if you just need a break from the game because you got scared of whatever monster you were hunting.
Absolutely, that's exactly how it goes.
Yeah. I know we keep coming back to like, meeting complete strangers and like you grow these connections and bonds with stuff. We have a Discord for Secret Levels, and we've got a bunch of people in there that are awesome. Like they're really good. I know friends for a while you're doing
the Friday Night Smash Brothers game. I don't know if that still happens.
Yeah, they still do that a lot. I don't get to do it as much as they do, but like they're religiously always doing something. Like it's our group, but like I have nothing to do with it anymore. Like it's just a community. It's a community by itself. Like I have nothing to do with it.
I'm telling you, you're running the cult wrong. That's not how you do it. You never thought the cult is the inmates the cult leader, my dude. Like you fucked up somewhere. You're gonna have to start. You're gonna have to start another podcast so you can get this thing right. Third time's a charm.
He's playing it safe in case the SWAT team shows up one day.
But it all goes back to like all these connections that people are making just through video games, or like because that's what we all connected on. They were listening to our show or whatever, and then like again, it's not even about the show anymore in that Discord. It's just a little family in there.
People talk so much
really
in the Discord group. I had to turn off notifications for that Discord group.
Oh yeah, that Discord's dead to me.
I did too.
In the best way. I'm like scroll. I'd have to scroll for years to catch up to what's happening.
Oh yeah. There's some times where I'll just be like, I won't look at it for 2 or 3 days because they'll just have so many conversations, and I'm at work and I'm like, I missed it all. I'm done.
Yeah, just come out with a bold statement later, and it'll just reset the whole conversation.
Yeah. Headline: Toby Von Doom hates his Discord group. I mean, here.
No, not at all. I just can't keep up with it. I don't know. It's such a cool little community of just like people that love video games, and then like they've bonded over other things like music or whatever it is. And again, all strangers. It's cool. We have people from Australia. We have people, just meeting people from around the world that there's no other way I would have met them.
Even have people all the way from Florida.
So I all the way from Florida.
Oh man. So we already started a little bit, Toby. That was like a toe in for a plug, which I'm glad we got to your Discord. But why don't you go ahead and start off this kind of closing segment? If you have any other thoughts on feel good video game stories, and make sure you get all your plugs in while you're at it.
I just think that games are. Video games, yes, they have their downfalls, but there's so many upsides. I've already gone over it all. Just the strategy, the problem solving. I think there's hand-eye coordination, the people that you meet, the connections you make. I don't think they're all as bad as what we thought. When they were raising hell about them in the early years of video games. Yeah. And I do a podcast about them, so I gotta say good things about video games because I want you to go listen to that at the Secret Levels podcast. And I've got my conspiracy podcast, Secret Transmission. you can go to badsecretmedia.com and find all the information to all the stuff and all the things. And come check out some retro video game reviews. Got like 100 episodes on both
You've been
shows.
doing Secret Transmission longer than we've been doing Diddley, but you've been doing Secret Levels almost as long as we've been doing Diddley.
Yeah, Transmission's been on a super extended hiatus, but one day
fishing for more
conspiracies.
Yeah, we gotta give all the like awkwardness of the last 4 years some time to settle down before we dive into it again.
At least the last 12 months.
Yeah. Bob, sir, you joined in late. We didn't get a chance to tell everybody who you are, so make sure you do so. And all of your cool stuff you got going down there at the Disney parks and the Universals and the roller coasters and the food stands and all of it.
Yeah, I'm Skipper Bob. You can find me on YouTube, and you can find my podcast co-host Jay. He does a video game review YouTube channel called Square Pegs. But together and a third friend of ours, we are the trio known as the Cretans Guild. Find us on Twitter and just about anywhere else that you can find podcasts. And I will say that video games can be a bonding agent as well, because a while ago, when I worked at one place where before everybody had their own individual sign-ons, and I would just bounce from one computer to the next in like this community room, and I would start playing this Flash game called Dice Wars. I would like bookmark it and then go off and do something, go to another computer. It's like, all right, let's bookmark it. And just before I knew it, that game was on every computer. I come in one day, everyone's playing the game. Everyone had found it. And I could hear people, this game cheats so hard. All right, try to beat the high score, guys.
That's awesome. Very cool. Richie, how about you, sir? Do you have any other stories you've been keeping under the hat there, or guessing your epic beard?
Well, thank you for that. First, I want to say, Toby, thank you for joining us yet again on this show. I appreciate it. Bob, I'm glad that you came up with a second story, because you literally started the joining in on this conversation with I like turtles, except it was I like arcades. So I appreciate you having a good save on that part. But I just want to say that, like, I mean, without games, yeah, we have this podcasting universe of friends that we have. But I think, like Toby said, games add on to that. I think games are a wonderful device to let go of frustration. Like, it's not to get dark, but like I've always really resented the time that we grew up and people talking bad about it, especially in like the Columbine days where they're blaming violence on what happened with the kids because of the games they were playing, where I think if anything, it probably helped them not crack a little sooner. If I can go off on a tangent, but like
if they're spending more money on video games, they wouldn't have been able to afford all that ammo.
That was it. The views of the look on Bob's face reflect the views of the other hosts on the show. But I just think the community as a whole, it has more ups than downs, and I think it's a wonderful world for people to get in. And I think the only people that berate it and belittle it are people that just don't have open minds, and they probably never played anything past Pong, to be honest. So.
And they probably lost poorly. That's why they're just bitter.
Yeah.
The paddle moves too fucking fast. I just want to shoot somebody.
But no, I think all these worlds are wonderful. I think I've heard people argue that, like, you know, books are better because you get to create the worlds. But like literally, Toby's brought it up. You create worlds, even in games for kids like Minecraft. Like, there's so many worlds that you can expand upon and build upon and have fun with and live in. And you know, you can turn it off when you want to and go outside if that's what you need to do. But like, I love video games. They've been a way that I connected with my father and my friends here in this room. So Bob sucks at Fortnite. Miles was actually decent in his first game of Fortnite, and Toby is just Toby. We danced a lot, but sometimes would win at Fortnite. That was many years ago. But you know, I just had to throw one more jab at Bob in there. I love you, Bob. But yeah, I think video games have a more positive influence on the world than negative, for sure.
You know, you just brought up the book crowd, and I don't have like the resource for this because it's years old that I read this, but I remember reading an article that basically said that reading a book and playing certain types of video games actually trigger like the same parts of our brain, like the same aspects or the same neurotransmitters, whatever it is, are firing in the same manner when you read a book as when you play certain video games. So I think that there's definitely something to that, and I definitely think gaming has been good for this group of people, probably a lot of those of you listening as well. And big thank you to both Toby and Bob. Bob, you're welcome. I've told you many times, you're welcome anytime, and I'm so glad you hopped on here with us. Toby, again, can't thank you enough. When we picked this topic, we knew that we had to ask you to be a part of it. And Richie, great suggestion, sir. This was a fun conversation, and this is exactly the type of thing that I was hoping for when I pitched Best Darn Everything, just to give us a true break from the formulaic thing that we do on a weekly basis, which we will be getting back to next week. So I'll tell you about that in a second. First, Richie, where can they find us?
You can follow Miles on or whatever his name is, at Mr. Most Days Off on all social media.
It's tricky. It's new. You'll get used to it eventually.
Yeah. You can follow me at @thewiz_kid23. You can follow our show at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY.
And again, thank you to our guests. Thank you to everybody who listened to the show and downloaded the show, told a friend about the show, whatever. We appreciate all that support. And the Whiz Kid and I will be back again next week with another Simpsons review. We'll be covering the episode 8, Misbehavin'.
All video games have a positive influence except for Simpsons wrestling.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.